Ethanol, man, it's been a huge part of my life, that's for sure. My mom, Christy Moore, has been a long time ethanol expert in the industry. Started out, working at ADM. She did way back in the day. I couldn't tell you the years for sure, but worked at ADM for about 20 years, and then worked at the Renewable Fuels Association, based out of Washington D.C. for about 7 or 8 years. And then now she's been an independent consultant in the ethanol industry for about the last 10 years. I've been listening to her talk about ethanol my whole life. So clearly it's had an impact on me and what I wanted to do when I grew up. And so here we are, the new biofuels manager over at Illinois Corn. I also cover new uses research for corn utilization. So I love it. It's done a lot for me in my life. So.
How would you characterize ethanol in the current economy? What would you say it is?
Definitely a good question. I would say the current economy, ethanol producers are going to be okay with low corn prices. Their inputs are super low, and they've got a pretty steady demand with the RFS program, which just turned 20 years. So ethanol is in a good spot. That we have struggled to grow that market like we kind of thought we would at the beginning, but still hopeful that we can get something done to move some more gallons. And at the end of the day, we're just trying to grind some more corn up. So,
what will it take to grow that demand and get those more gallons? What will it take?
It'll take a lot of people working together. Specifically, we are going to need probably legislation to move some more gallons, but also we're going to need a lot of support from farmers using their voices to support biofuels and everything that they do for farmers at the end of the day. But also, we're going to need the public to start accepting the facts as opposed to some of the narratives that have been out there a long time about ethanol and biofuels. Compatibility is really, really not an issue anymore with most cars and E15. So if we can grow that E15 market, it'll incrementally, start to grow some gallons, but also it'll just show people that, biofuels are actually good.
Now, where are the challenges that need to be at the top of the list to get to where you want them to the commodity to go?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, a lot of my background's in retail infrastructure, so that's where I started in the ethanol business, was with Growth Energy, doing higher blended infrastructure incentive programs through the USDA. So I was writing applications for fuel retail owners to get a matching funds grant to replace some of their infrastructure at their stations, and in turn they would just have to offer higher blended ethanol fuels or biodiesel fuels. So I think compatibility with our infrastructure in Illinois specifically is I guess middle of the pack. We have a lot of places that are selling E15 and higher blends up in the Chicagoland area, but outside of that, not a really big availability for biofuels in E15 specifically. So we got to grow availability of the fuels outside of Chicagoland for us specifically in Illinois. We got to get this fuel to the rural areas where the farmers can actually use the product that they're making. So that's probably step one, is making sure that our infrastructure in the retail space is equipped to handle the new fuels that are coming, but also at the same time make sure that the retailers are equipped with the knowledge and information that they need to offer the fuels and market the fuels successfully.
So the difference between Chicago and higher blends and downstate Illinois with lower blends of ethanol is really just the gas stations and the pumps they have. Is that what you're saying?
I'm not saying that. There's definitely some incentives inside the Chicagoland as well that, they're using reformulated gasoline and higher blends, but it's also almost just kind of like most of the investment into the infrastructure has gone into the Chicagoland area. So, when they hold these HBIT programs and stuff, most of the time they are basing these on gallons sold at the station, not necessarily, like impact that it'll have on the community or anything kind of like that. So, a lot of these high gallon stations in the Chicagoland area, and, most of our population's up there. So they think, targeting the high dense population areas and targeting, greenhouse gas emissions in those areas, is beneficial. But, at the same time, it's got to be statewide in order for it to be really effective and grow those gallons for us.
Okay. Do we need to work with the EPA to do anything to help this out?
Yeah, I mean, I think it'll take, a little bit of everybody. EPA, we need good support from the DOE as well, and I mean, pretty much anyone that we can kind of, get them thinking about the fuel from the facts. So a lot of the times, we battle some of these old narratives like food versus fuel. We are always just trying to leave it up to the science. So what does the data say? What does the science say? Will it work? Is it effective? And there's also, programs around the country that are already working for this. Like Iowa sells a ton of E15 in rural areas as well. So, making sure we're on the same page with, our representatives and stuff. But, at the end of the day, we're going to need support from everyone.
Will we need more support from Congress or Illinois legislature, or are there any governmental bodies that need to be lobbied harder?
Yeah, I could say that, you can lobby as hard as you want, but you got to be saying the right message to the right people. So, there's a couple bills that we're supporting inside of Illinois, but, we're also holding out hope that we can get something done on the federal level as well to support, either higher octane fuels or cleaner burning fuels, and both can use ethanol you can use ethanol to accomplish both actually at the same time. So we're doing our best to balance, targeting statewide legislature as opposed, and not opposed, but also, keeping in mind, federal legislature as well. So, a couple bills in Illinois, we're trying to, get a infrastructure program back up and running that was running for a while here in Illinois that, helped expand the availability of biofuels and higher blended fuels around Illinois. Hasn't been running since probably about 2017, but, programs like that are really crucial to, retailers being able to offer these fuels and have access to them just like anywhere else.
Does the general rural public, not necessarily metropolitan areas like Springfield or Peoria or Decatur or something like that, but will farmers themselves, will they be major consumers of ethanol?
I think if they could be, they would be. Farmers are supportive of ethanol because what it does for them and their grains. But at the same time, they've got to be aware of all the facts. They like what vehicles can run on E15 or E85. They've got to be educated, and I think we've done a really good job here at Illinois Corn of educating our directors and making sure that they know, like, hey, if we're telling all these people that they need to use higher blends, but we aren't using them ourselves, what does that kind of say? So all of our directors have been super great at educating themselves, asking questions if they're confused, and they're all awesome. So they've also been super beneficial to me in my new job, just starting here, of expanding my knowledge on like farm practices. I'm not an expert on farming. My family and we didn't farm, so I'm learning from them, but at the same time, they're emailing me and asking me questions when I see them in person about ethanol, and not just about ethanol, but also about just biofuels in general, whether that's renewable diesel, biodiesel, SAF, sustainable aviation fuel, or pretty much anything. So, the farmers or the growers, whatever you want to title them, they've got to be on board of supporting their own products as well, and that would be one part of that would be using ethanol and biofuels.
What is the problem on in ethanol refining regarding CO2 capture? There's a problem in getting it transported across the country.
Yeah.
Because a lot of farmers don't want pipelines through their farm.
Yep.
But it seems like there should be technology that will allow ADM to capture all the the carbon dioxide that they're emitting and turning it into a product that has value.
Yeah. So I know that there's ethanol plants already today, capturing CO2 and selling them to, whatever company they would need it. Off the top of my head, I know a couple, beverage makers purchase the pure CO2 from ethanol plants to use in their carbonated drinks. But not a CCS expert. I'm doing my best to learn as much as I can every day about it, and rely on the experts that are actually doing the science hands-on. But I do know that there's a problem with obtaining Class 6 permits, which actually allow you to use the wells to start storing carbon in Illinois. So I've been up to Marquis to talk to them, and some of the problems they've run into, which they own all the land that their piping's on and their wells are on. They own all the surrounding farmland around that, except for I think one block of it. So they don't have a problem with land ownership or anything kind of like that. They're just simply waiting for permits to actually be able to use the infrastructure that they've already built and put in place. But then there's some like One Earth Energy out of Gibson City. They got hit with the water basin thing. So they had to build a pipeline to ship it out. But once they start doing that, then you run into some landowners not wanting pipelines on their land. So it is a problem. CCS is very important to lower the CI score of ethanol, which would open up new markets for U.S. grain, kind of like the EU, and meeting all their strict standards for biofuels. But also at the same time, it's healthier for the earth. So if we can find a way to get people on board with instead of emitting the CO2 out of the air, safely storing it, capturing it, and storing it. The science has been done. I'm like I said, I'm not an expert on carbon capture and sequestration, but I've talked to some people about it, and the science is there that shows this works. It's safe. A lot of people bring up ADM's failure from back in the past of them pumping CO2 down into the ground. But that failure happened thousands of feet below the surface, and that CO2 was never actually going to get out of the formation that they had pumped it in deep into the shell of Illinois. But I think at the end of the day, it's just kind of political. Can we get these Class 6 permits on the table for some of our ethanol producers, and that would in turn allow them to lower the CI of their product, being better for the environment, and then also at the same time unlocking some new markets for ethanol coming out of Illinois.
Speaking of new markets, what about new markets for corn otherwise?
Yeah.
Bioproducts and things like that the Grains Council wants to explore as well.
Yeah, and I had mentioned a little bit of my background interning for Growth Energy, and they kind of taught me a lot about the ethanol industry. I'm very new to the new uses side of my job, which is super interesting, and some of the smartest people I've ever met coming out of this industry. And there's a lot of exciting products that I've gotten to hear about through a couple of the programs that national corn growers run, like Consider Corn and Radical. That if we can build some demand for these products and get people on board with bio-based products as opposed to petroleum-based products, and how they function just as well, and they're going to be cost competitive when they come out, that's a big thing. So the new uses side, there's some exciting stuff coming. I can't talk about some of the things happening going on right now just because they're going to announce them here pretty soon. So yeah, I'm super excited to learn more about the new uses stuff. But yeah, we got to find some demand for all this corn. We got a big crop coming up and some low commodity prices. So we got to find some more demand. But yeah, I can tell you that there are some very smart people working very hard over there to come up with some new corn-based products that have a very wide range of usage in the United States, and specifically Illinois as well, but pretty much everywhere.
What have I not asked that's important to this conversation?
Man, I guess here as of late, there's been a couple things that have come out in the last couple months, like the extension of 45Z. We were super proud of the limit on foreign feedstocks. So we need to use feedstocks that come from U.S. agricultural first. you know, it doesn't give us a fair shake if we're importing feedstocks that can be, you know, that would replace, you know, U.S. agriculture. So we were super happy with, you know, foreign feedstocks getting limited in 45Z, but also at the same time we were pretty disappointed with sustainable aviation fuels credits getting cut from $1.75 back to $1. It's probably going to stunt some investment into the sustainable aviation fuel industry, which it's just expensive to make the fuel. So if you don't kind of reward producers of that fuel with a credit to clean up our, you know, jet line transportation, then it's just not ethical, or not. It's ethical, but it's not. There's not, the economy math doesn't make sense on, you know, why would we build this? Why would a airliner buy this product that's more expensive than this product if they don't have to right now?
So it's really going to take credits that basically is money going back to the SAF producers to really make that product viable then.
Yeah, that, or you know, just continuing to develop the technology of producing sustainable aviation fuel from corn. You know, there's a ton that needs to go into, you know, developing that practice, but also at the same time, you know, rewarding those producers just like any other producers, but equally. So they're producing, you know, a more expensive fuel that is in turn going to, you know, go into our airlines, but they're not getting rewarded at a higher rate than, you know, on-road fuel use. So we were a little bit disappointed with seeing that cut, and also seeing the extension of 45Z only going to 2029 as opposed to 31, which was the original date. So you know, there was good things and bad things that came out of the one big beautiful bill. A lot of good for farmers, but also didn't check all the boxes that we were kind of looking for.
Okay. Well, is this a target area for the corn industry and the biofuel industry to carry on and say, hey, we're not done, boys. Let's get to work? Yeah,
I know that when we were in D.C. a couple weeks ago for Corn Congress, there was a big talking point in the biofuels action team was sustainable aviation fuel, and you know what that market's kind of going to look like without this credit. You know, some people are still super enthusiastic about it and think it's going to, you know, continue to grow, and then there's some that are, you know, skeptical about it, and they don't know, you know, what the landscape's going to look like without this large credit for producers. So we'll kind of see what ends up coming out of it, but I do know that, you know, we're still invested in sustainable aviation fuel, and so are pretty much all the producers that were in it originally. They just got to continue to make it more efficient producing that fuel, as it's just too costly right now.
Anything else that we need to put on the table to discuss?
Man, I mean, there's literally a ton going on. We've got, so Ethanol for America Act just got introduced. So
what is that? I haven't heard of that one.
So a couple senators are bringing back up an old rule that EPA actually approved in 2021. It's about labeling laws for E15. So what it would do would walk back some of the stringent E15 labeling laws across the United States and allow retailers to, you know, offer E15 without having to cover their pumps with all these labeling specifications that are required right now in some states. Some states, you know, have opted out of that and kind of have their own labeling laws. But you know, this is a widespread rule that, you know, if this is taken into effect, it can really unlock retailers to offer this fuel and market it the way that they want to, and as opposed to, you know, the way that they're being told to make their dispensers look and make the fuel look. So I'm a strong believer that, you know, too much labels scares away consumers. You know, if it's got all these warning labels on it, are you really going to buy it, as opposed to, you know, the headache-free 87 that you've always been buying? So you know, I think that labeling act could really unlock retailers' potential in offering E15 countrywide.
Now, what are the warnings? I mean, I may have seen them on a gas pump, and maybe everybody's seen them on a gas pump, but I'm not sure what the problem is with using E15.
So a lot of the labels kind of outline, you know, what kind of cars can use it, model years, makers, stuff like that. What the bill's kind of asking them to do is put it on a level playing field with other fuels. There's misfueling with other fuels as well, but there's not a million stickers next to that blend of fuel. So what they're pretty much just asking is put E15 just like on the same level as E10. It'll have a label that says it's up to 15% ethanol. It'll have a label that says, you know, you can use this in model years 2001 and newer. And we kind of believe, you know, that's all the information that consumers really need to make that decision at the pump. And if they want to learn more about it, then they can do that research. Most consumers that, you know, from the data that I've seen, they don't read the labels really. They go up, they pick their gasoline based on, you know, every consumer's a little different, but 95% are just like you said, they pick that fuel based on the price. They hit that button, they pump the fuel into the car, and then they're on their way. So, you know, we're just trying to, you know, put higher blended fuels just on a level playing field, as opposed to, you know, having to cover your pumps with all these warning stickers, when in reality, you know, E15 is compatible with a little over 96% of the cars that are on the road today.